I'm here outside the Steilneset Memorial, the memorial to the victims of the 17th century witch trials that took place here in Vardø in North Norway, and it's the setting for my forthcoming book from Picador, The Mercies, which is coming in 2020. I keep crying, so I'm going to now turn the camera away from myself and walk you through the memorial to give you an idea of the beauty and scale, which I think does justice, hopefully as close to justice as can be done for the victims of these awful witch trials. It's certainly one of the most moving tributes and memorials I've ever been to, perhaps matched only by some of the memorials I've seen in Berlin. Over to the right, in the distance, you can see the Star Fort, Vardøhus Castle, where many of the women and men were held, tried, tortured by Hans Koenig, who was actually Scottish and brought much of King James's hatred and fear of witches over with him from Scotland. So once you get inside, it goes very dark. And here we are. There's no one here at the moment because it's about 8:30 in the evening. We're in the time of the midnight sun, so it won't get dark at all for a couple of months at least. And here I just want to show you some of the work, amazing work done here by Dr Liv Helene Willumsen, who is the leading expert in the Vardø witch trials and who has translated their testimonies and abbreviated them here in Norwegian, and there's a little leaflet that tells you what they say in English too. So this is Morten Olsen, who was brought before the court at Vardøhus Castle in 1601. His estate was valued at 27 units of silver. He was accused of practicing witchcraft together with Christian the tailor and of casting a fatal spell on District Governor Hans Olsen, who was killed in May 1601. He was convicted of witchcraft and his estate was devolved to the king, and he was sentenced to death by fire at the stake. And this final sentence repeats almost 91 times along here. Each of these lights is set at these windows, and I think this place must look extraordinary when the time of the eternal night comes. Vardø is the most northeasterly point of Norway, and it doesn't get any light for 3 months of the year. I met with the academic who wrote the texts, and she told me a few things that I found interesting about this structure. Firstly, that the people who commissioned it wanted the architect Peter Zumthor to use materials that were very sturdy, very solid, but he didn't want to do that, despite their warnings about storms. He wanted to use fabric, so these walls are actually a reinforced fabric. And Liv Helene was telling me that when the storms blow in winter, they ripple like the sails of a ship, and the sound must be extraordinary because above our heads there are also sort of folded fabric that must whip about. And the ground is also not very solid, it's wooden, and you can see there are these gaps. And again, Liv Helene was telling me that this is because Peter wanted the grass in the summer after a few years to be able to grow up through, so it looks like you're walking on a field almost. I want to pause here at Kristin Sørensdatter, who I actually borrow her name for the Mercies, and she stood out to me because she was unfortunately accused of being the leader of the witches, and in particular leading them to conjure a storm in 1617 that killed 40 men, 40 fishermen from the surrounding area. And I'll just read you the translation of the testimony for her and show you her window. Each of these windows is positioned so land, sea or sky. So she was accused of practicing witchcraft and was told she would be spared torture if she confessed at once, but she pleaded innocent and was forced to undergo the water ordeal, where they dunked them into the freezing cold water of the sea outside. She confessed after this that she learnt witchcraft when she was 16, that the devil came to her in the likeness of a dog, that she renounced God and her baptismal pact, and that she tested the potency of her craft on a ball of yarn which ran around on the water, and that she next tested her powers by blowing air on her calf, which subsequently died, and that she took part in casting spells that caused the storm that killed the 40 men on Christmas Eve 1617, and it's this event that my book opens with. And I've been back here 4 times now, and it's really an overwhelming experience. It's a very big space that feels quite close and claustrophobic in some ways, and I really would love to come back here in winter when it's pitch black, even in the middle of the day, and see all these lights. I can imagine with the fabric and the wind, it would really feel like a ship pitching on land. And just the scale. Scale is sometimes hard, I think, to comprehend. And I know that when I've gone to memorials for victims of the Holocaust and other such atrocities, I find it incredibly hard to feel the scale, the impact of each death. And these are 91 people, and it is overwhelming to read this sentence, even 91 times. Found guilty and burned at the stake, over and over, apart from the last man to die in the panics. So the panics lasted almost 100 years. They lasted 91 years. And 91 people died. And my book focuses on the 16, 20 and 21 crisis, I suppose you'd call it. But I've come about 3/4 of the way, and if you were to give each of these lights, each of these testimonies, each of these lives, even a minute of your time, it would take an hour and a half to walk down here. And even talking with Liv Helene yesterday about her process behind writing these testimonies, I found it incredibly moving, the care and attention, and she said that she focused very much on the rhythm of the testimonies, the trying to make the individual voices come through. She told me lots of interesting things. She was an incredible woman. But it's sort of extraordinary to be in here alone. The last 3 times I've been, there's always been someone else in here, and it does feel very reverent. So that's the entire length. And now we go outside to Louise Bourgeois' installation. And this is actually Louise Bourgeois' final installation. She died before she could complete any of her other projects, but this incredible piece of work, actually, incredible piece of art, she completed. I just love the way it reflects the sky. And again, coming back in winter must be so different, but... And the way this whole place is set up is so clever. You're sort of driven through, herded through. You can't go back, and in order to get back to the beginning, you have to go all the way around. Half-kilometre walk it must be to get back to the beginning, if you can stand to do it more than once at a time, because it is incredibly effective and moving. Here we are. So this is actually believed to be the spot where the men and women were burned at the stake. And something that really strikes me standing here that I couldn't get at all from the photos, because as you can see from it being a video, it is an incredibly moving and effective piece of work, even in video, but something that it doesn't capture is the heat and the sound. I'm quiet for a moment. The flames roar even in such a small number, and it doesn't take much imagination to imagine the noise if they were increased to such a size as to murder a person. And I think that's what this whole setup is so effective at reminding us, is that these were individuals innocent of their crimes that they were convicted of. And the mirrors are positioned so that if you stand, you become witness and part of the installation. And there have been some very intelligent things written about this, but all I can do in front of this piece is to feel it. Literally feel the heat, hear the sound of the flames, but also having spent time already imagining these women's lives and the conditions necessary to create such an outpouring of fear and hate and murder. It's something that I really feel. And I'm so glad I was able to come here.